Good morning, Oorsee family. Today I am speaking with Leon Versveld. We are going to talk about this hot topic of immigration and refugee status for South Africans. There's been a lot of information thrown out there, and we just want to, from Oorsee's side, talk to an established immigration lawyer and get behind the facts. As you know, Oorsee is not a political organization. We don't support or encourage people to immigrate, nor do we judge people who do. It's a personal decision. The only thing that Oorsee does is support and provide a community for South African expats to connect. So I'm going to hand you over to Leon and let him introduce his company and his uh, immigration law firm in the US. Leon, thank you for joining us.
Baie dankie Walter. Kyk, ek is 'n ou van Pretoria af en is nou al in Amerika vir die afgelope 24 jaar. Maar enige ou wat van Pretoria af kom, praat maar nog steeds die goeie moedertaal. En vir die ouens wat nou nie in Engels verstaan het nie, sal ek maar oorskakel in Engels en maar die res van die onderhoud in Engels hou. Maar ek dink daar gaan ek miskien ook 'n paar kere terugkom wat ons terugkom na die moedertaal toe, miskien ook net so 'n bietjie vir die boere laat weet dat hierdie is regtig waar 'n program wat reël is. Dis 'n program wat nog nie uitvoering aangegee is nie. En ons gaan 'n bietjie meer in detail praat. So, for those of you listening, my name is Leon Versveld. I'm originally from South Africa, born in South Africa. I went to the University of Pretoria, was admitted as an advocate over there, and practiced for a brief while before I came to the United States. In the United States, I'm admitted to practice law in the state of Missouri, and my practice solely focuses on US immigration. I have been here for about 24 years and exclusively specialized in the area of immigration for 20 years. Prior to that, I did a variety of litigation, both on the defense and plaintiff side, just inherent from my years as an advocate in South Africa. So today's topic, it is February 14th, and I feel like this is important to note the date because just last week, a week ago, President Trump announced in an executive order that he is planning on stopping aid to South Africa and coming up with some kind of a refugee program. And that would be the topic of discussion today.
So my first question, and thank you for that great summary. My first question is, I mean, there is so much information out there, and I've seen even, you know, journalists in South Africa established for years getting some of these facts wrong, right? So first, can we start with explain to people the difference between asylum seeker and a refugee, because it's not providing asylum, right? Is that correct?
That's correct. So first of all, the actual order talks about refugee status, but let's just quickly define what's the difference between asylum and refugee. You can only apply for refugee status if you're outside the United States. For those who are in the United States already, this is not applicable. There is no refugee status for someone who wants to apply while in the United States. Now, asylum, on the other hand, is somebody who's in the United States who want to claim asylum.
Okay, so can you just speak to everybody who's legally in the USA already, whether on a student visa or maybe a non-immigrant workers visa, who wants to now claim that they claim asylum? Will this executive order apply to them?
So I think that there is a good argument in an asylum application for us to make an asylum. Prior to this order, we have had a lot of people who would ask us if we could help them apply for asylum. And the first thing that I would say to those who we consult with is, number one, you're going to go to an asylum officer unless you have, if you make your claim 1 year within entry. And the first thing the asylum officer is going to ask you after you have explained to him how terrible it is, how many times you've been hijacked and you fear for your life, he's going to ask you if you've ever been to Cape Town. Now, the first time you use the word Cape Town with a South African, his eyes lights up and he tells you how beautiful the place is and how gorgeous it is. And then the next thing the officer would ask, why don't you just move to Cape Town then? And that's the end of the conversation. Now, there has been some very egregious consultations that we've had regarding some very egregious circumstances where there has been farmers, especially, who has been isolated and has been purposefully gone after. So those are a little bit different. And the thing what I'd say is either with refugee or asylum seekers, the first thing we need to do is define a class. And we'll get into that here in a little bit before you then go on to say, all right, well, if I've defined a class that I belong to, what can I prove that I've been discriminated against? But just the long and the short of it, those who are in the United States want to claim asylum with this executive order. Our firm believes that there is now an intervention here that would make it possible for a colorable asylum case, but it will need to be consulted on a case-by-case basis.
So, okay, so let's move on to what President Trump has said in the executive order. He mentions refugees, and he was specifically addressing in that Afrikaners in South Africa, right? A very broad statement, difficult to define. So I don't want to get into the detail of that, right? What we've seen the office in South Africa for the US has kind of redefined that as a minority group, right? So
Yes.
I don't want to get into the detail of that. I want to speak more to what does it mean for refugee status from an immigration point of view, not from a speculation or rumors or any of that nonsense. I want to cut through all the BS we've seen on the news and the media. What does it mean to apply for a refugee? What is the process? How long does it take? Let's just start with those basics.
All right, let's first start off by saying it's February 14th, and there is no refugee status that is implemented for South Africans coming to the United States. So if
Yes.
there's any guy out there who's wanting to take your money and saying he's going to help you apply for refugee status, you should run as fast as you can because there is no program as of today. But to your question, as far as the definition, and that comes into the class definition, because as I mentioned before, in a refugee or asylum case, it's very important to define what class there is. And so, with the executive order being very broad, which was announced on February 7th, it talked about this Afrikaner refugees. And you and I both know, and all of those in South Africa know that, there is, does this then exclude, the English farmers who are in the Natal coast, farming with the sugar canes, right? But what has happened since the February 7th date, when this executive order came in, the U.S. Embassy actually issued a fact sheet that I think is very important, for your listeners and viewers to take note of. The U.S. Embassy actually kind of mimicked what the order said, but kind of helped define a little bit what this Afrikaner refugee mean, and it includes minorities. This would be Indians, coloreds, as well as whites, and they define them as disfavored minorities. And so these disfavored minorities would be those who are being discriminated against because of their race and seeking refugee status as a result of that. It's not just also the U.S. Embassy fact sheet also doesn't just leave it to those whose land are being reappropriated by this Act 13 of 24, the Expropriation Act. It actually also kind of enhances that to even some economic disadvantagements. And so I think to that point, it kind of makes it a little bit more broad. And then last but not least, you ask, so what is the process involved? So until such time that the Department of State and Department of Homeland Security has laid out exactly how this is going to happen, what's the limit of refugees that they're going to allow, which I think based upon the executive order, doesn't seem like there's going to be a limit. And also where to apply and what the process is once you do apply and what benefits you typically get. All we can lean upon is what they typically do for refugees that comes from war-torn countries that oftentimes find themselves in a situation where they are kind of, taken out of the country and come and settle into the United States. Remember, when we think refugee status, as of most recent, we think about the situation that happened in Afghanistan. And there's quite a lot of those. You see that plane leaving, and there's a lot of those guys that got left behind. Those are kind of refugees. A guy that basically has the clothes on his back and maybe a checkers bag with some clean underwear and some toothpaste, and that's it. I mean, so when you take that kind of background and you compare it to the folks who are being disadvantaged in South Africa, it's not quite the same. There's some people who meet that kind of background and some who do not. But until such time that this rolls out, I think we need to just kind of stand by and see how this thing is going to roll out. So the U.S. Embassy, I think, is going to be our next focus on where we would keep up to date with regards to how this plan is going to roll out. I know that the U.S. Embassy also has an X account, the former Twitter account. They have recently published, I think on February 12th, they published something on their X account. When I looked at that, it was really just kind of a graphic of a fact sheet, nothing more than what we already know and what we've already discussed to really kind of determine as to how this program is going to roll out.
So I want to reiterate a couple of things there. Uh, First of all, and I think we should talk about this a bit, is about the stigma around refugees, right? Uh, Typically, yes, it is in the recent past been Afghanistan, or you think Syria, South Sudan, people from Somalia arrive in the US and they've been very gracious to receive refugees from these countries. A couple of 100,000 normally a year the US takes in, and they do provide support typically. There would be a stipend, there would be aid to get people settled in, there would be accommodation initially, typically, there would be support to get them jobs. There are quite a few also NGOs, non-profits that support refugees coming to the US, whether it be resettlement, finding jobs, and even more tacit things like helping them convert their qualifications to a US equivalent. So,
Yeah.
a lot of ideas from South Africa that I've seen online, social media, even on the news, is you're running away that image of you arriving with nothing and that you're arriving in a hostile environment. So I would just categorically push back about that in
Yes.
any form. I've been in the US just over 8 years now. When during COVID, I moved into an RV with my family. We traveled to all 50 states for a
Mhm.
few years.
Uh-huh.
We've seen everything from rural to city to every part of
Mhm.
the
Mhm.
US, and we have never been treated with anything other than the warmest welcome, open arms.
Yeah.
Even in the most conservative parts in the mountains of North Carolina, where we settled,
Mhm.
very conservative, red area of the state,
Mhm.
conservative people, the best friends we've made up in
Mhm.
the mountains. So
Mhm.
there's no truth to the rumor that the US treats immigrants or refugees in any other way but a warm welcome. I mean, you might have some exceptions and anecdotal experience.
Mhm.
I've never experienced that, and none of my friends. So
Mhm.
I just want to push back completely against this idea that if you come to the USA as a refugee, you will be discriminated against. And I actually want to ask you, there are actually laws that uh, stop employers from discriminating against refugees. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think you are in a class, just to that last point, you are in a class that actually gets a little bit more preferential treatment. America is all about bringing everybody into a same opportunity for an equal opportunity for you to excel from there. Not an equal outcome, but an equal opportunity. And to that point, there is the notion that refugees who are coming from wherever they are coming from with that designation needs a little bit of a boost. And to that point, employers also has very specific instructions on how to deal with refugees, not to deal with them with gloves, but also just as a, for instance, if I have an employment authorization that I'm applying for, refugees are treating a little bit different when I file that application to kind of, not needing to wait for an approval and so on and so forth when I do renew the work authorization and
Let's
things
just
like
quickly speak about that because the EAD acronym is used in the media quite a lot. And I remember when my wife got a visa, I had to apply for that EID, and
Mhm,
it took nearly a year where
mhm.
I wasn't allowed to work. It's different for refugees when they come over, correct? Right? They can
Yes,
work almost immediately. It's like weeks. What is an
yes,
EID? What does it stand for, and what
yeah.
does it empower you to do?
Perfect. EAD stands for Employment Authorization Document. There's a form that is filed, and yes, they do get preference as far as adjudication is concerned. It doesn't take very long for EADs to get adjudicated anyway, but ask those who are standing in line and saying, Leon, you're a liar. Um, it's a simple form that needs to be adjudicated. But yeah, there is preference given to refugees, especially for employment authorization documents that allows them to work anywhere. Now, once you get the employment authorization document, you also do get a social security number. And just like in South Africa, when you want to open a bank account with your ID number, social security number is something you're going to utilize everywhere you go. The social security card, along with your work authorization card, will also then allow you to go to the Department of Motor Vehicles, the DMV. Everything has an acronym over here. And so you should then be able to apply for a driver's license. And just on that driver's license point, anybody in South Africa would breeze through getting a driver's license in America because you literally just need to hold the car in the road. It doesn't even have gears. You put it in D for daytime driving and it keeps going. Yeah, you don't even need to change gears, and like all the kind of stuff that we needed to go through in South Africa with that K, whatever that license thing is. But anyway, so you'll get integrated into society very, very quickly. I think, Walter, maybe just to your earlier comment about the refugee stigma. Look, I mean, there isn't a category that says South African refugees, right? Or Sudan refugees. So they don't declassify it. It's just a classification of a refugee where they're going to give you as much support as they can, what they would give to the guy who's got the shirt on his back, to the guy who doesn't need that. So the benefit of most South Africans that would be coming in, there's going to be enough support for you to get your with get over your hitting the ground running. Also, if you don't need to hit that support, you can basically with an EAD go find some jobs and go do what you need to do and what South Africans are good at doing.
And I would just say, from a personal perspective, uh, the USA has been really good to us because, uh, different to South Africa, we don't deal with a 30% plus unemployment rate, right? You
Yes.
walk into any store and they're hiring, right? It's not easy to immigrate. I'm not trying to
No.
convince anybody to come. It's going to be the hardest years of your life, giving up your country. So we don't encourage people to immigrate. It's a personal
Mhm.
choice, right?
It
I
is.
cannot
Yes, I
speak for
agree.
anybody else, but there is
Hmm.
no negative aspect I can say from the US side, where people try to paint this picture that they're negative towards immigrants in the US. That is not the case.
Hmm.
Employment is a lot easier to find in the US. I think our unemployment when we lived in Florida was minus 3%. You know, 3% more jobs than people. I mean, it's difficult to fathom that situation as a South African. But yeah, there's a lot of work over here for people who are willing to work. But you're
Hmm.
not going to come over here and get a free ride. This is not immigrating to Europe as a refugee where they might just give you a house and
Yeah.
provide
No.
for you for life. It's
Yeah,
not
that's
that
right.
type of society. You're going to get support initially,
Hmm.
and then you're going to have to find your own feet. But there are possibilities here for people to work who are willing to work hard to make a great
Hmm.
success here. So I
Yes.
wanted to reiterate that point. Then, secondly, very categorically agree with you and state that if anybody right now is asking you for fees to
Mm.
help you fill in forms or
Mm.
apply, that is an absolute scam and bullshit. Let us just tell
Mhm.
you that straight right now. That is
Correct. Yes.
to protect the South African general public. You should not hand over your money to anybody right now who can
Mhm.
promise you they can get you in the front of the line or get you a better application, because as of today, it doesn't actually exist as a functional option.
Correct.
Right. So we will keep updates on Oorsee, and we will get a link onto your site as well at the end, Leon,
Mhm.
so people can find out the right information. But that
Mhm.
was just something that we categorically wanted to state.
Yes.
Then I wanted to talk just about the general refugee situation, how the US handles these applications, how it affects a family. Like, can you bring your whole family over? Can you bring your pets over? What about all your assets?
Mhm.
And again, back to that stigma. This isn't you're fleeing Afghanistan hanging off the side of a plane. Think of it more
Mhm.
like what happened maybe in Europe during the Second World War. Lots of Jewish people had a lot of influence, funds, and
Mhm.
the ones who were lucky enough to leave early, were given refugee status in the USA, and
Mhm.
they could take all of their wealth with them,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
As opposed to
Yes.
the ones who stayed and might have lost everything, including their lives. So
Mm.
there are different degrees of refugee, and we got to get past the stigma. Am I correct that you can bring all of your assets and your family and your dogs and everything with you?
Yeah, that is indeed correct. I'll tie just back into, I'm not here to sell America to you. I'm just saying, hey, listen, if you are considering America, there's now become a new option. Another option, aside from the L visas that we do, the H-1B visas, the agricultural visas, the green cards, this is just another option if you want to consider. To your point, Walter, yes, absolutely. One application will include you, your spouse, and all your kids under 21 with one application.
Okay.
When you do immigrate, just like with any other immigrant visa, where you basically is packing up and leaving for Perth, or pack for Perth, as they say, you can in fact then make arrangements, for you to bring your dog and everything else that you need to come over that you would have otherwise gotten if you do get a refugee status.
Okay, so you can bring your family, you can bring your dogs, you can bring all your assets, right? Another rumor and nonsense that I saw is once you're here, the USA won't let you return. And I just want to kind of justify that. Like, you're coming over as a refugee, and during the time while you wait for your permanent residence, you can't really claim I want to go back to South Africa for the hunting season. You're claiming that you're uh, perceived or real danger, and you're escaping South Africa, right? So until you get permanent residence, you're stuck here, but nobody's gonna kidnap you and hold you for ransom here. If you want to go back, you go back, but you lose your refugee status. Talk me through that and what's real and what's not real in those kind of perceived statements.
No, for sure. So that is something to consider. Returning back to South Africa is going to be um, will be an option, but coming back after you have returned back to South Africa is going to make it a very interesting conversation at Customs and Border Protection,
Yeah.
especially as a refugee from that country. Number one. Number two, um, fast forward, if you've been a refugee for 1 year, you are eligible, at least under the current refugee program, to apply for permanent residency. Once you apply for permanent residency, again, each individual can apply for permanent residency within after that year. And once you're permanent residents for 5 years, you can apply for citizenship. And that, at that point in time, I would say it's probably far more safer then if you want to go back to South Africa, to travel back to South Africa. Anytime before that, I would discourage anybody to go back to South Africa, even on a permanent residency, because, like I say again, coming back to America would create a very interesting conversation over at the border patrol, and you may stand a chance of losing your refugee status.
Leon, thank you so much for cutting through all the nonsense that's out there. I just want to end from my side. Right now, there is no active refugee application
Correct.
process. So people must just be patient. We're waiting for the US State Department to get more clarity. We're waiting for the embassy in South Africa to provide more clarity. So until then, we will provide updates on Oorsee. I just want to let you get the final word in about other services, and we'll put a link at the back end of the video just with your details that they want to get hold of you for any of the other traditional visas that is still ongoing and available for South Africans.
Thank you, Walter. Yes, absolutely. We are versveldimmigration.com, but the Versveld has an F in the middle. It's only the South Africans that put a V in it, but Versveld is Loftus, right? All right. Well, absolutely. So, the ongoing visas that we are still actively doing are the intercompany transfers, where you have a company in South Africa and you want to move to the US and open up a company over here. These are ongoing. They're happening as we speak. We have quite a lot of South Africans that utilize that intercompany transfer visa. The other one that we also do quite a lot of is high net worth individuals who come to the United States to invest in the United States $800,000 into a program, get a green card right off the bat, and then after 5 years or so, they get their green card, their capital back. These are the two predominant lines from where we see South Africans utilize. Obviously, we have the farm workers that come over on a seasonal basis. This is non-immigrant in nature. And if you do happen to find an employer who is able to sponsor you for kind of a specialized position under the H-1B, those are also some visas that we do. But let me just say thank you again so much, Walter, for inviting me. I hope that this was informative to you all. We will provide a link on our website, so I encourage you to please register there to receive updated information. We are updating everybody who signs up there as regularly as we can, so that jy dit van die perd se bek af kan hoor. What the latest is on this particular situation.
Okay. Baie dankie Leon, baie dankie vir jou tyd. En
Groot
ons sal 'n
plesier.
link opsit op die video na julle webwerf toe, dan kan julle vir die mense die regte inligting gee. Baie dankie.
Dankie Walter, goed gaan. Mooi bly. Bye bye.